Hello again. There is an increasing clamour, backed by everybody from the Church of England to Lenny Henry and Lord Chancellor David Lammy, for Britain to pay countless billions of pounds to the descendants of slaves whose ancestors were taken from West Africa and set to work on the plantations of the Caribbean. The idea is that Britain is uniquely guilty in this matter. This is a strange and counterintuitive idea. For the island of Zanzibar, now part of the nation of Tanzania, also had plantations worked entirely by slave labour. If those living in present-day Jamaica deserve financial compensation, then so do the modern inhabitants of Zanzibar. The Arab slave trade in East Africa was a horrible business which caused at least as much suffering as the better-known transatlantic slave trade. Millions of Africans were captured and taken north to the Ottoman Empire and also east to Zanzibar, which was an Arab colony. Specifically, it had been occupied by the Omanis. Zanzibar had a huge slave market, so the slaves were initially taken to the market at Zanzibar, and from there they were exported all over the Arab world, all over the Ottoman Empire. The main slave trade in East Africa took place there, as I say, and Zanzibar in the 19th century had mutated from being nominally a Portuguese colony to an Omani one. It grew so wealthy in the 19th century from both the slave trade and the production of cloves that the Sultan of Oman transferred his sultanate from Oman to Zanzibar. As early as the beginning of the 16th century, Portugal had staked out a claim to Zanzibar. The Portuguese were at this time claiming various parts of the world as their own, ranging from territories in North and South America to large chunks of Africa. The colonisation of the island of Zanzibar was not without opposition, though, from the inhabitants, who, by and large, seemed to prefer to be part of the Muslim sphere of influence. British ship calling at Zanzibar towards the end of the 16th century saw no indication of Portuguese control, although the island was nominally being administered from Mozambique, which was definitely a Portuguese possession and remained so until the 1970s. In the 17th century, the influential citizens of Zanzibar invited the Sultan of Oman to take over the country. This process was accomplished smoothly enough, and the Portuguese conceded the administration of Zanzibar without too much fuss. It was from this time that Zanzibar became established as a major East African centre for the trade in slaves. During the 17th and 18th centuries, there was a brisk trade in slaves in Zanzibar, but then in the first decades of the 19th century, the situation arose which meant that Zanzibar itself also required a large body of slave labour. As the British gradually brought to an end the plantations worked by slave labour in their own possessions in the Caribbean, so at the same time this system began in Zanzibar. The crop was clove. The clove tree originated in the Malacca Islands of Indonesia and was exported from there by Asian traders first to China and then Egypt and Europe. When the Portuguese and Dutch arrived in Indonesia in the 16th century, both countries attempted to establish a worldwide monopoly for the market in cloves. They succeeded pretty well in cornering the market between them until the French obtained some seeds and began cultivating them on the island of Mauritius. At some point in the early 19th century, seeds from a clove tree were brought to Zanzibar and grown there. The island's climate proved to be perfect for the plant, and it didn't take long for the first plantation to be established, which was running by 1820. 15 years later, there were 4,000 clove trees growing in Zanzibar, and although the Dutch still had a stranglehold on the production of cloves, Zanzibar was bidding fair to being a major producer itself, a situation which persists up to the present day. It was an agricultural venture which, like cotton in the United States, was entirely dependent upon the labour of black African slaves. This trade brought wealth and prosperity to Zanzibar and some parts of the African mainland, which were also controlled by the Arabs of Oman. Indeed, Zanzibar was becoming such a thriving place that in 1840 the Sultan of Oman, Said, moved his entire household from Oman to Zanzibar and declared it to be the new capital of his empire. Empire is a perhaps rather too grandiose a word to describe the territories ruled by the Omanis at that time. Apart from Oman and Muscat on the southern end of the Arabian Peninsula, it included Zanzibar and a few ports such as Mombasa, which the Sultan had claimed a little earlier. It was perhaps inevitable that Omani pretensions in Africa should have led to conflict with Britain, because not only had Britain outlawed slavery in their own empire, they were keen to eradicate the practice throughout the whole of Africa. The British Navy began to make its presence felt from the 1840s. In 1847, Zanzibar and Britain signed an agreement in which the Sultan agreed to stop importing slaves from Africa and to allow the Royal Navy to search Omani vessels. There was no provision for the abolition of slavery in either Zanzibar or anywhere else on the coast. This would have been impractical because a large part of Zanzibar's prosperity depended upon the clove plantations, which were worked by slave labour. On the Kenyan coast, it has been estimated that over 40% of the population were slaves. For the time being, the British were content to see the trade in slaves from Africa to other destinations curbed. Most of the people living in Zanzibar today, which is an island off the coast of Africa, it forms part of Tanzania. Older viewers, I should say, probably remember when Tanganyika was a country. Tanganyika and Zanzibar joined together to form the modern country of Tanzania. As I say, most of the people living in Zanzibar now are the descendants of slaves who laboured on the plantations when the Omanis ran the country. If it is just and right that we must pay compensation to the people now living in Jamaica, then it must surely be also fair that Oman similarly pays compensation to those living in their former colony of Zanzibar. I would like to know what viewers think about this. I can think of any number of similar situations. I gave Zanzibar simply as a case which is very well documented, but I can think of quite a few others. It seems to me that if we're going to start paying compensation to former slaves, then it's a practice which is going to be worldwide rather than limited to former British colonies.